and welcome to another exciting episode of the Political Twilight Zone, the PTZ, and I'm here with Morgan Brittany.
Hi, good to be here.
Well, the election is finally over. Got lots to talk about with that, but it's kind of like we can exhale now.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, that is true. So, what is your take on everything with the election, particularly the presidential side of it?
Oh, you know what? I was honestly sitting watching the returns come in that night. The most striking thing that hit me as I was watching him, even when I was texting back and forth with you, he seemed so far ahead and was doing so well, and everything was just rolling along, and it was like, yes, of course, he's doing great. And Florida came in, and then, other states were coming in, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everything, the vote counting stopped in the swing states. And it stopped, and I thought, well, is something wrong? I mean, nobody's saying anything, but this is weird. The counter hasn't changed over in the longest time. And then I heard one commentator say, gee, I wonder what's going on. They haven't had any updates in a while.
Right.
And that was the first clue that something's not right here. Something is not kosher. So, I tend to believe that this was all planned, all, thought out ahead of time. Because, John, why did they say, even before the election, CNN and MSNBC and all these liberal commentators were saying, oh, now, everybody, don't worry. I mean, when the election results start to come in, it's going to look like Trump is way far ahead. But no, you just wait, because when those mail-in ballots come in, then Biden's going to win. Now, how did they know that ahead of time, that it would play out just that, like they predicted, unless they knew?
Yeah. And what's so frustrating about it, it's brazen. It was done right in front of our faces. I mean, it's not like they were even trying to hide it.
No.
I tell you, the first sign of trouble, I knew what was going on when, and I didn't even hear this at first. My sister texted me and she said, well, they stopped counting in Fulton County, Georgia because of a water line break. And I'm like, right, a water line just happens to break and that stops all counting. And I thought that they're stopping it because they're looking for votes.
That's right.
And then it stopped counting all over the country. Even and I got to give a shout out before I forget. There was a gentleman, I don't know his name, but he runs a YouTube channel called Red Eagle Politics. Excellent site.
Oh, it is. Yes, you sent me there, and it's really good.
His analysis before the election was spot on. He just about called everything except the presidential race. He called all the, he said the GOP would pick up seats in the House, but probably not enough to quite, have control of it. And he also said they would hold on to the Senate. That night, even he was mystified. I guess it was around 9 or 10 o'clock when everything just kind of seemed to shut down. He said, I don't understand this. We're not getting any results from all these swing states. And that's when they went in, and I'm going to segue because today, Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and I can't remember the other lady's name. Ellis, I think is the last name.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
They laid out the evidence they had, and one of the things that she said is that the algorithm that they used to try to steal the election was overwhelmed because Trump was so far ahead in those states, and they had to make a adjustment in midstream with that Dominion software so that it would start switching votes for either losing Trump votes or switching Trump votes to Biden. And one of the really interesting things she said that I had not thought about, and I'm a programmer myself, is that what they were doing is that they were weighting the votes. They were giving like Biden 1.5 for every vote and Trump like 0.50 or 0.75.
Right.
And I'm like,
I heard that as well.
Yeah,
yes.
that's I have to say that's very clever for them to do that. Very evil. But yeah, and so I went to bed probably about 11 o'clock election night, and I knew something was up. And then, of course, I woke up the next morning, and all chaos had broken loose. So,
Right,
um,
right. Yeah, he had lost. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. He was what 400,000 or 500,000 votes ahead in Pennsylvania, and he lost it all.
yeah,
And I mean, not only lost it all, but Biden gained so much.
right,
I mean, that was another interesting thing they talked about today too. Was the fact that they found all those ballots that they were pristine ballots, and they only had Biden listed. And the dot was filled in next to Biden like a machine had done it.
wow, yeah,
And they kept saying, this just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. You don't have where there's a ballot with no down ballot, candidates or issues.
right,
So there's so much evidence. I think they panicked because Trump was so far ahead that they got sloppy and had to do whatever they could do, and they didn't cover their bases too well. They might have gotten away with this had Trump not had such a huge lead.
right. And that would explain why those ballots had only Biden and none of the down ballots. Those were ones they had to get in there really quick to make up for the margin that
That's
Trump was
right.
ahead. He was actually, you mentioned like 500. He was actually up in Pennsylvania at one point by like 700,000 votes.
I know it, and the deeper they look into this, the more they're finding in Wisconsin and Michigan that they're literally finding that more people voted than were even registered in certain counties or
Right.
certain districts, and they're finding out. So what they did is they just put. Somebody was talking about it today on the radio, saying that they would take a ballot. It might have been Rudy Giuliani. They would take a ballot and they'd run it through 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then there'd be three votes for Biden. So they got sloppy, and when you're cheating, you can't afford to be sloppy.
Well, and I don't think they expected. I'll put it this way: if it was anybody but Trump, they would have gotten away with it.
Oh, sure.
And I don't, and we'll get to this in a minute. I don't whether it leads to Trump, the election being overturned and Trump being reelected. At this point, like they said in the press conference today, is not the major point. The major point is to expose this and finally stop this from happening in future elections. Because it's not just this election that's happened in; it's happened before. Even Klobuchar and Pelosi were complaining about this in 2018 about the same software that it was
Yeah.
switching ballots. So, of course, the media just ignores the fact that they made the complaint too.
Yeah, and I think the New York Times did a whole piece on it.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're looking at people who could see it, but then it got accessed by the people that just had to win this election no matter what, and it just boggles the mind. But I loved what they said today, especially about the fact that this is not about winning or overturning an election. That's not what this is about. This is about showing the American people that their vote counts, that when they go in and they cast a ballot, it counts, that we cannot lose the integrity of the voting system. We can't.
Right.
And that was great, because that's exactly what they needed to say.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I've already learned a lot about this. And maybe I'm a little bit naive or stupid, but I never in my life thought that we would be using a software that other countries also had access to, that could potentially, whether they did it this time or not, or where they've ever done it, the potential is so much there for another country to go in through software and screw our elections.
Oh yeah. But I mean, just the audacity of these people to use Dominion that was literally used by Chavez to cheat and win his elections. I mean, and then to bring it here. I mean, the state that turned it down was Texas, that said no.
Right.
This is too compromised. We're not using these machines. I mean, it's you're right. The things that you learn that they send our ballots over to Europe. I mean, what could go wrong there, right,
Yeah.
John?
I'm sure Putin just had a passing interest in what was, in that software, what was showing on the screen. Yeah.
It boggles your mind, like how in the world these people are so deranged and so obsessed and so just drunk with getting power back that
Right.
they'll do things like this. I mean, it just makes you go, I can't believe that they do this.
Right. Politics is all about power, and yeah, it's evil, and it leads into the whole issue of the globalism too. I mean, the globalists hate
Oh
Trump
yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
because he's a populist. But I do want to play. This is a short clip. I just got home a little while ago. I did want to play this one though. I love this. Is right at the end of Sidney Powell talking when she was first up there. So let me play this.
Infuriating and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it. And we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Wow.
That's amazing. You know what? She reminds me of. She reminds me of the United States as Margaret Thatcher.
Yes. Yes.
She really is. She is just a dynamo. I'll tell you. Between her and Lynn Wood and Rudy Giuliani and the rest of that team, I'll tell you, and here's the thing. It's like Rush Limbaugh said. If Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood didn't have a case, do you think that they would put their reputations on the line if they didn't have proof to back this up?
Well, yeah.
There's no way they would do that. And that's why I don't think the media knows what to say about them. Because they know their reputations.
Yeah, right now they're mocking them. They're going to try to mock them or ignore them. But then if they actually get some cases won in court, then will come the all-out attempt to destroy them. And I'll tell you something else, and I'll make this prediction. And it's really not a prediction because we know what's going to happen. A couple things. First, if any of these legislatures, Republican legislators, try to assign electors that will vote for Trump over Biden, those electors, their houses will be identified, their family will be threatened, they will be threatened. I mean, it's already happened to those two people in Wisconsin. I would not put it past them to threaten the judges that this goes to, whether it be Supreme Court or not. They've already threatened lawyers that were representing the Trump team in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's what the left does. If this was such a, if there was no fraud, then why not let it play out and let Trump make a fool out of himself? No, they know there was fraud because of that. You can tell because of their reaction.
I know it. And it's so frightening to me because it's almost like you look at tactics like this and you think, Gestapo and people like that will stop at nothing to get what they want. And that's what just amazes me. And even when I hear so-called whatever's left of moderate Democrats out there, they're even saying things like that this has gone beyond. This has really gone beyond what the old Democrats are like,
Right.
So, I completely agree with you.
And what's interesting is, I know that we're still, going through the process here. I guess the question is, though, what will happen? I mean, I have no doubt that they will, try to unturn every stone. But what do you think about? Will this be enough to overturn this election and give it to Trump, or is this just going to be, Biden's going to be president, but this will be exposed? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I know that if they've got a case that they can present to the courts that is just, absolutely indisputable, that they literally, the courts cannot say, yeah, but there's a little gray area here, maybe this. If they've got an airtight case, I don't see how they can't overturn it.
Right.
I really don't. Because if they overlook it, then that means the Democrats got away with it, and they'll always get away with it. If there's ever a Supreme Court that would overturn it, it would be this one.
That is true.
And, I kind of think in my mind, I think, well, maybe that's divine intervention that Trump got 3 judges on that court.
That is true, because it pretty much makes John Roberts irrelevant. Even if he voted with the liberals, it would still be 5-4.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah, in particular, got Amy Coney Barrett in there under the wire. I hope so. I hope you're right on that.
Well, I think about it, and I think that the main thing that the Democrats were so, just hated these judges was because they're strict constitutionalists. And if that's the case, and there really was this amount of fraud and this amount of deception and this amount, how do you look at that and not say something has to be done to right this wrong? I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to figure. It's also going to, how it's going to be. There's going to be lower courts that are not going to do it because they're going to be Obama people. And, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough. But I think, the affidavit that came through from that guy who literally knows how those machines work and how they change the votes, that's pretty solid. So they've got some good stuff.
Yep. Scott Adams, I've been listening to him a lot since the election, and he's the one that created the Dilbert comic strip. And he has I like listening to him because he has a very interesting and unique take on the world. He approaches everything from the art of persuasion, and of course he's a hypnotist too. So he kind of, he talked about the last couple of weeks about how we're seeing brainwashing in real time, where the media is trying to keep saying that there's no fraud, there's no evidence of it. And he said that's because they're not looking at it at all. You can easily say there's no basis for fraud when you haven't even investigated it. Mm-hmm. He thinks that Trump will eventually be completely vindicated, that it will prove there was massive fraud, but that the fake news has become so powerful that they just won't report on it. And that you'll have a situation where he said we're going to have like somebody, he just uses an example, Fox News will proclaim that Trump won and CNN will proclaim that Biden won. He said, what's going to happen at that point? He said he thinks that eventually even that Biden will probably be president. He's not 100% sure of that, but that Trump, the history will record that Trump actually won this election. And of course, by nature, he said if Biden wins, then it's going to be a bloodbath for the Democrats in the midterms and in 2024. So that's his take on it. I'm not going to make a prediction yet because I don't know where it's going to go. I agree with you. If ever this was going to be overturned, it's with this Supreme Court. I'm just still cautiously optimistic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, me too. And I do hope that some type of resolution, at least there's a light shining on Georgia at this point. And all the fraud and all the missteps that were taken down there. There is a light shining brightly on that, which is probably going to help the Republicans win that those Senate races, because of the fact that it is so focused on they're coming up with ballots that they didn't know they had, that never got counted, that this and that. So there's going to be a lot of people watching that race. And no matter how much money they throw into it, no matter how many ads they put in on it, I got to tell you, it is pretty crystal clear that the two candidates running against the Republicans are just, I mean, one is like Reverend Wright. He is a communist Marxist to the nth degree. And the other guy is just he's just a wussy little liberal. I mean, that's all I can say. Right. So they don't have much of a chance anyway, unless they cheat. But the fact is that I think it's going to be so much harder for them to cheat in this runoff election. I really do. And another question, which I have for you, if they did a hand recount of those ballots, they only counted the presidential votes. What happens if, say, the Senate candidates didn't need to go to a runoff?
That's a good.
They got more votes that were found.
That's an excellent question. I don't know. I'm assuming they just did a presidential recount, but I haven't.
Yeah, but if those ballots came in and there were votes with President Trump's vote, and there was, say, Kelly Loeffler or the other guy, I mean, wouldn't that be counted toward them? I just don't understand why their campaigns are not demanding a recount as well. But see, if there's this much of a discrepancy in the presidential race, then you know that the down ballot, there has to be that were really, really close races, like Martha McSally's race. You know, I mean, if you look at that, I would think that these candidates would say, hey, we were so close, we need to do a recount. I would.
Yeah. Well, let me flip real quick here. And there were, despite what's going on in the presidential election, there's a lot to be happy about with the Republicans. They have drastically reduced the Democrats' control of the House, and there's still some contested seats. It's possible that the Democrats may only have like a 4-seat majority when it's all said and done. But this is interesting. I was reading the other day that every seat that the Republicans have flipped from blue to red has been captured by a woman or a minority. This wasn't an accident. It was spearheaded by Elise Stefanik from New York. I really like her. I'm just going to read a couple different names of people that won. Journalist Maria Elvira Salazar beat Donna Shalala in Florida. Yvette Herrero, citizen of the Cherokee Nation, beat an incumbent out in New Mexico. Burgess Owens, former NFL star and a black man, won in Utah. Tony Gonzalez, I think they haven't called this yet, but he's on the verge of winning Texas's 23rd congressional district. Victoria Spartz, a Ukrainian immigrant, retained a seat centered in Hamilton County, Indiana. Young Kim, who is Korean, won California District 39.
That's
and
right.
Michelle Steele won California District 48. All right, so in the Senate, there's some good news, too, that Tillis hung on in North Carolina. Lindsey Graham won in South Carolina when they thought they were going to steal that seat. Then I'll tell you, the one that surprised me is Susan Collins won by 9 points. Those polls were just entirely wrong.
Oh, yeah, they said she was just not going to make it, and she did. She beat them by a lot.
Yeah, and then they also gained a seat back in Alabama, where they Tuberville beat Doug Jones, which was who had won back in 2018, I think. So at this point, the Republicans have only lost a net of 2 seats. It's 50-48 pending those runoff elections in Georgia. So the blue wave did not materialize. It was really more of a red wave, and I think that will continue in 2022, whether Trump prevails with his with the court cases or not.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think we're only going to get stronger in the House, and I'll tell you, I don't know what's going on with Nancy Pelosi. What is going on with her? I mean, I know she got voted back in as Speaker, but why is she talking about this is going to be my last run as Speaker? And then she's also bringing up the 25th Amendment. Now, And she said it has nothing to do with Trump. Do you
Oh.
think they're already planning on shuffling old Joe out
Yes.
and putting Kamala, whatever her name is, in there? Because you know that's who they want in there.
Yeah. I think that's going to happen. Definitely. And that's the reason, I think that's the main reason why they kept Pelosi in there. Yeah, because they had a trial one with that about a month ago when Trump had the COVID virus.
I know.
So,
I know.
yeah, they want to replace it. And Biden's already made a couple of comments that he doesn't want to pursue Trump after he leaves office, and a couple other things that won't sit well with the radical left. So if he asserts too much independence, then he's going to have some, unfortunate medical condition that they're going to force him out. So
yeah, and you know that's coming if he does. They're just biding their time right now until all of these court cases are over. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And nightmare of all nightmares. Yeah. Bernie Sanders as labor secretary.
Yeah. I like that. You didn't catch your pun there. You said they're biding their time. That was a nice...
There you go. Biding their time. That's right.
Well...
Yeah. Oh, I heard about Bernie Sanders. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. That would be something else. Well, the one thing we do know, it's going to continue to remain exciting, and we'll continue to monitor it here on the Political Twilight Zone. I'm John Baldwin, and...
I'm Morgan Brittany.
And we'll see you next time, folks.